Good morning, everyone. My name is Pauline Randall. I'm from Virtually Limited, and I'm also known as Liz Ferlinghetti in Second Life. Do you need a second life? Well, that's one of the things I want to have a look at this morning. But the key thing I want to have a look at is how you can actually engage students in using Second Life. I think there's probably been quite a few presentations that people may have seen which covers the kind of overview, what is Second Life, it's a virtual world, how many people use it. I really just wanted to take it a little bit further than that this morning. First of all, I just wanted to show you some pictures. Victorian classroom, blackboard, chairs, rows of desks. A bit more modern classroom, chairs, rows of desks, whiteboards this time. Second Life classroom. We seem to have the same sort of things that are going on in there. Now, I find that a little bit scary, that we actually take a virtual world, we spend a lot of time developing stuff to go in there, and we get everybody to sit in rows of seats and look at a screen at the front. And I think there might be just one or two other things that we could do with this environment. So the first question is, if you're using Second Life or you're looking at Second Life, what are you doing there? Are you just going in there because everybody else is going in? I mean, I've kind of sort of thought back to kind of the early days of the internet, when a lot of people were sort of saying, first of all, there's nothing much out there, and then secondly, oh, we better be up there. We've got a website, but we're not quite sure what the objective of the website is. We don't know why we're there, but we ought to be there, so maybe we're just kind of going with the sheep. So I think possibly the first question you have to ask is, why am I doing this? What is the point of it? So why a virtual world? First of all, what are you trying to achieve? Do you have students within one organisation, one campus that you want to use this for? Do you have disparate students who are spread around the world that you might want to use it for and you want to bring them together? Are you trying to do something there that you can't do in real life? You know, key questions you can have a look at there. One thing I can promise you is that students will not be entranced by PowerPoint slides in Second Life. Getting them in there, the overhead of getting into Second Life and going in and sitting down and watching some slides probably has about the same benefit of watching paint dry. You know, students are used to things that are much more fast moving. If they play games, they're doing things that are much more interesting and interactive. So I think we need to kind of think a bit further along than that. The other question that you probably need to ask is, could the teaching that you're doing or you're planning to do in Second Life be done more effectively with another tool? Would a web page work better? Would a VLE work better? Now, this sounds like I'm being a bit contradictory, that I'm sort of trying to tell you to not use Second Life, but I'm just saying that it's a tool in the box, and there's a lot of other ones, and it's using the most appropriate one for what it is that you want to do. A couple of projects that I'm working on at the moment that we are using Second Life for. I'm currently doing a build with Ashridge Business School, and that's going to be quite an exciting one. We're starting off by creating the real-life building. So you might say, well, why are you bothering doing that? But it's giving us a landmark for this particular build. But then what we're going to do is we're going to start looking at ways that we can use Second Life, other forms of social networking, e-learning, VLEs, and tie them all together for a group of students who don't spend an awful lot of time in the business school. They tend to be high-flying execs who come in, they'll spend a short amount of time at Ashridge, maybe come in for a weekend or a week, and they'll go back out to their jobs. So we're looking at the ways that we can actually use Second Life to bring them together, to allow them to work with their fellow students in a more immersive environment. So there'll hopefully be a bit more news on that one later when we've worked out quite what we're going to do. Another one I'm working with at the moment is the JISC RSCs in Scotland. We're developing some induction workshops for Second Life. And these are including interactive activities as a way of getting people used to using the environment. So they'll go in there and there'll be a whole load of things that they have to do, but one of the things they won't be doing is watching slides. So the question is, how do you engage your students? First of all, I think it's a clear purpose to being there. They need to be clear what it is that you expect of them when they get in there. I think if you get Second Life, you dump them in there and say, well, we're going to do something, but we're not quite sure what it is yet, and might be some slides, and we'll do one or two other bits, and go and have a look round. But if you're not clear, then they're not going to be clear, and I promise you they'll get bored really fast. It needs to be interesting and challenging. What I have seen on occasions with people using Second Life is they do two things. First of all, they just dump students in without an induction, because they do games, so they'll get the hang of it quite quick, won't they? So they're dumped in there, and then they're given something which isn't overly complicated. So perhaps we need to be looking the other way around, maybe giving them inductions and making it harder when it gets in there. Because if you think of some of the things they're doing, if they are playing games, they're certainly doing something more challenging than something that's just going to be a couple of clicks and we'll find the details on the way through there. So I think sometimes we need to make it more difficult, not less difficult, but give them proper introduction to it in the first place. And then have clear outcomes. What's the end product you expect from it? Are they supposed to have completed something, found something out, discussed something, written a report? What is it they have to do? Again, clear objectives for that. Just to give you an idea to play with as far as using Second Life, I was just thinking of some of the things that you could maybe translate into there. I mean, there's lots of other ones, but this is just one of them. So I thought, well, maybe if you took business education, you took or marketing, something like that, and you take a case study. And perhaps it's a business plan exercise. And so you get together a sheet of paper, lots of information, what the turnover is, how long the business has been going for, all really kind of exciting stuff. And then you give it to students and they have to write up their views on how viable this business is and your proposals for moving it forward. I don't know, I'm getting a bit bored with this by now. You know, I mean, you go through there, you think of what the theory is, you write it up. You've got all the data on one piece of paper. You've not really had to do a lot of work perhaps with that. We could make it perhaps a bit more complicated. So the other way you could do is actually create a scenario in Second Life. And one idea of many that I thought of for this actually came up when I was sitting in Starbucks with a client one day. We were tossing ideas around of what you could do with Second Life. And, you know, I suggested that you could maybe, why not create a coffee shop in Second Life? Why not embed all the information about that business and how effective it is into objects in there? So if you pick one of the muffins up, it tells you what the unit cost is, tells you what the margins are and everything else from there. The till might tell you what the turnover is. There might be an office in there which has other information about how the business is running. So all the information you need for this case study is contained within this area, but you have to go and look for it in sensible places. And you might have to go and start pulling things together. So in that case, you could then send a student into an environment like that. You could make it really quite complex for them. And they have to then think about the information that they're pulling together and then write up their case study and how they're going to deal with it and what their proposals are for the business. You could, if you decided to get a bit cleverer with it, perhaps start to build in some more scripting into it so that if student A goes in there, they get a different set of figures to student B. Or you might decide you want to do it as a team working exercise. So you get a group of students go in there and they have to then pull together that information, discuss it and write it up. So it's not just about necessarily containing everything within Second Life, but it's also about being able to take it out beyond there in terms of using it for discussion, developing what their thinking is on the way through. Some other scenarios you could use that for, I've got using a laboratory, health and safety aspects. I was talking to somebody earlier in the week about using a lab. You could do some experiments in there and see how badly wrong they can go. I think the photograph up there actually probably covers the last three options on there. I hope it's not a kitchen. And then just really sort of some final thoughts on what you can actually do with this. As I said, I think the first thing really is the proper induction. I've seen people kind of dropped into this environment too often and been left to wander around. Can I just do a quick show of hands? Who's actually been in Second Life? Oh, great. Actually, it's quite a lot more than probably if I'd asked the same question a year ago. Is there anybody, people, quick show of hands again, who are actually using it several hours a week or maybe doing some stuff with teaching in it? Right, not quite so many there, but at least you started to explore a bit in there. But if you think about it, when you joined Second Life at first, You kind of dive in there. And if you're interested enough to go and find out, you will spend the time going through there, finding out how you move around. How do I walk? How do I fly? How do I teleport? How do I talk to people? How do I find anything that's going on in here? And if you add up the number of hours you spend doing that so that you then have a reasonable amount of experience in this world, so that you can then say, oh, hang on a second, this might be really useful to use for something. It actually adds up to quite a bit. So then if you go along, you develop something for your students, and then you get them to create accounts and you just drop them in, then what happens? They kind of wander around. They're not quite sure how to do anything. They get distracted off somewhere else. They're not really sure what it is that you want to do. The induction, I think, is the key thing. At the moment, I'm doing some research on how people find getting into Second Life, and I've had a questionnaire out that quite a lot of people have answered so far. And it's interesting the number of people who feel that really having some level of induction makes a huge difference to how fast they can get on in there. So if you want your students to be able to use it, then you're definitely doing an induction will pay dividends. I mean, you wouldn't give a computer to somebody and say, who's a computer novice, and say, just write up this report, without assuming that they would know how to use the system. So we shouldn't be doing the same with Second Life, or any other virtual world for that matter. I think the other thing is not to make the activities too simple. As I said, I've seen people go in there and they've done things and it is just way, way too simple. If you start to think about what students are engaging with in gaming, and whether it's World of Warcraft or Grand Theft Auto or anything else like that, they're a lot more complex. They're going in there, they're having to discover things, they're having to develop levels of skill and things like that. So if you give them something which is just go in there, click a few bits and carry on with it, they're not going to really make anything out of that. And they will get very bored. And I have got students who say, I don't know why you get Second Life. They're not interested. I mean, the average age of the average user in Second Life is about 35. So you're actually not looking at students who are, so there's not everybody around the 20s who are in there. It's actually older people who are using it. Not old people, older people. And the other thing, finally, is also, as this is new and you are finding your way through it, is ask your students for some help. Again, with technology, I've seen it happen with teachers where they're loath to use technology because they don't quite necessarily understand all of it. Whether it be smart boards or projectors or mobile phone technology or anything else like that, and they don't feel terribly comfortable with it, so they're loath to use it with their students. Because the students might see that they don't really quite hack it, and they might be better than them. Well, they're a really good resource for your students. Why not use them? Why not get them involved in it? Why not give them some of the things that you think you might like to do in Second Life and ask them what they might do with it? And use their ideas and their keenness to get involved to develop different interesting things. I mean, you get some of them who might be interested in doing some building in Second Life, who might want to do some scripting, who might want to start to push through some of those ideas of what you can do there. So I think they're a very, very good resource that you should take use of and get some ideas back from them. And you'll also probably get something which is more engaging to students because it's coming from their perspective. Maybe get 1 year to do for the next year or something. And then be creative, be innovative with Second Life, make it work for you. It's a great environment for doing things that are either too complicated to do in real life, too expensive to do in real life, impossible to do in real life. Whether it's, parachuting off the Eiffel Tower or flying around the Statue of Liberty or going through a giant organ that you can't do in real life. There's all sorts of really exciting things in there that other people are doing, and I would sort of urge you to look at to see what they're doing as well. It is a place where you need to use your imagination, and hopefully it will be more than just rows of chairs and PowerPoint slides at the end of it. Thank you.